thank you, Matthew, for like doing this and like being on here and like talking to us. Um, I guess we can start with some introductions. I feel like I would love to kind of hear a little bit more about you, like how you kind of end up, doing what you're doing right now, and what did you study in college, and just like what's like your overall journey's been until like Heavy Manners Library became a thing.
Yeah. So my name is Matthew James Wilson. I'm like really excited to be doing this, and thank you so much, Alex, for asking me. My background, I'm from Toronto, Ontario originally, and grew up in upstate New York. And while I was growing up there, I went to a public art high school, and I also worked at this shadow puppet company when I was a kid in Toronto. And that's like a whole other story. But I think both of those experiences really got me interested in making art and just working on productions in general. And towards the end of high school, I really wanted to continue to make art and figure out a way to do it as a living. And so right before college, I started an art magazine with a couple friends called Forge. And that was a way to interview artists and people who had a professional practice with art, and then also support a lot of young artists who are making work. And it was a really great excuse to meet a lot of people I looked up to and learn about different art practices. And I think outside of school, really talking about what a career in art looks like, or what a practice that doesn't have to be financially motivated with art was really inspiring. And I did that. I moved to New York to go to the New School, and I studied illustration there for 2 years, and I was doing the magazine the whole time I was there. And halfway through, I was offered a job at Vice, and so I left school and started working there. And that was around the.
Okay, hold up. When you say you left school, you meant you just quit, basically.
Pretty much. I mean, I had already interned there. I was doing the magazine at that point, and was starting to get a lot of freelance writing work and photo work and other opportunities. And I don't know, I think the New School is almost even just designed for people to go there and I think just being engaged and hardworking, you find a lot of opportunities outside of school pretty quickly. And most of the people that I know who went there, kind of that's their story. And I think for me, I just sort of felt like if working at a place could give me a lot of opportunity to learn new things, and especially working at Vice at the time, I feel like the year that I worked there was honestly an additional year of school or something, or I learned from so many really smart people and met incredible people like our mutual friend Liz. And I was doing the magazine still and did that for about 8 years. And I also worked for a few record labels, and I worked for the Bowery Presents, which was a music venue and promotion company. And and so while I was doing all of those things, I started meeting more artists and understanding what benefits and disadvantages came with being sort of a freelancer or being a self-motivated artist. And I think I also just seeing how publishing and journalism was changing, and also how social media was affecting art communities and stuff, that was always really on my mind. And so I then moved to Los Angeles to work for a record label out here as the label manager. And I continued to do the magazine and freelance writing and photo work for a handful of labels and clients. While I was here, a friend of mine, Molly Soda, who's an incredible artist, and I think I would describe as an internet.
I love her.
She's amazing. One of the smartest, funniest people I've ever met. I think even the feeling of getting to work on stuff at that shadow puppet company when I was a kid, just making stuff and like painting every day. Like, I think something that was really on my mind during the pandemic was like, I don't love that all these types of work that I do require like sitting behind a computer all the time, and it would be great to, yeah, totally. And I think that yeah, so we started renting a space at the end of, or at the beginning of 2021, and we had a soft launch in that location, and then we moved to the current place where we are, which was a gallery called Machine Project for about 15 years before we were here. And the landlords have been really supportive of what we're doing. And yeah, and so now we have, on the upstairs floor, we have a little storefront with some secondhand books and stuff people can buy. And then across from me, we have a gallery space on one side of the room. And then we have a lending library where people can sign up to borrow a lot of rare and hard to find or expensive art books. And then downstairs, we do programming like readings, life drawing classes.
Oh no! Well, Matthew got kicked out. I will wait until he gets back on. Oh, are you back?
Am I back?
Yes.
I don't even see that
You
happen.
flipped out. Yeah, you flipped out for a minute.
Dang, well, quick coffee break.
Yeah, well, I mean, also maybe like a good, you were just giving us the lay of the land of like, the library itself, but I think I would love to kind of hear a little bit more, maybe like context around Koyama Press for people who might not be familiar with it. And also like second part to that kind of question is like, you mentioned that, you know, like community has always been kind of core to the way that you look at the way you work or like, you know, your creative practice. Like, do you feel like COVID created a sense of urgency around like your desire to engage people in like more tangible spaces? So I know two very different questions, but maybe some context around Koyama Press would be helpful.
I think that makes a lot of sense. Yeah. So Annie is just like one of the most inspiring people I've ever met and worked with, and she published a ton of really great art books and comics and different things through her publisher for I don't know how long exactly, but definitely like over a decade, I think. And she's somebody also from Toronto who I met going to fairs, and I interviewed a lot of artists that she published, like Jane Mai, Michael DeForge, who actually designed our logo, which you can see right there.
Oh my God, that is so cute.
Yeah,
there's also one in the room. So.
Yes, you can see it somewhere around there.
Do you remember what it was called?
Yes, yeah, it was called What It's Like to Be Black in Indie Music, I think. And yeah, it was published in 2020, a few months after a lot of the like discussions around abolition were really big online and in a lot of community spaces. And I think from personal experience and a lot of discussions I had with people, I feel like people who were concerned about things that were being brought up and wanted to be supportive didn't really have a bigger picture of why things have gotten to the state that they have in the US and in a lot of creative industries. And so for that article, I interviewed a handful of peers and people working in different facets in the music industry, people who were artists themselves, people who worked in radio promotion, people who worked in like playlisting, and yeah, and that was just a really eye-opening experience to talk to a lot of Black peers about just how the music industry, in a lot of ways, especially the indie music industry, is not really set up to live up to some of the like social ideals that I think people assume are baked into what like an underground community is supposed to be. And yeah, and so I think writing that article was really such a great experience for me and led to a lot of conversations, and I met a lot of people because of writing it. But I think the overall feeling I had by the end of it was sort of like maybe if I want to do this work or I want to affect this change, maybe the indie music world is not the place that I need to focus my energy on that. And so
That's like a bummer kind of like realization to get to, like
a little bit, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's like realizing, how much you can push, like, and how that kind of rubs against your optimism or like a desire for change, I guess. So
totally. Yeah. And I think that even just from working for labels and publishers and different things, like I think a lot of stuff that is set up around selling a product or selling intellectual property or whatever, so much of the community ends up really rallying around stuff that sells really well or stuff that has a big audience. And especially with the internet now and being able to have these metrics that are visible for music and people's engagement, I felt really disappointed that a lot of the conversations and a lot of people were just so transparently focused on numbers and money and not really community. And I think that once I started thinking about working in a project that was based on a library, I think with a library, it's sort of like you go into the space and you can look at a shelf and sort of pull whatever value that you want to from each of the books on the shelf. And it's not about one being a bestseller, it's not about one being more adored or valued. It's much more about seeing them as a whole and seeing how they relate to each other and gleaming different information from each thing. And so I think that, like, in general, even just seeing art as a practice and not a career, I think it's really important to approach community in a way that doesn't create this competitiveness or doesn't make it feel like there's a hierarchy of people's work or their value in a community.
Yeah, that just makes me think about how, I mean, again, it really makes sense. I think whether it's like through your work with Forge Mag, like, the illustration community before that, like you're always kind of, you're always a connector and you always love creating like a hub or like a platform for people to get together. And also I feel like with the library right now, it feels like it, as you're talking about, negotiating tangible spaces, I'm like, oh, that makes sense. Like, you're kind of representing in like a physical space, like all these things that you and Molly and the community that you're kind of engaged with, like, are thinking about. And it lives both, obviously online and also like in this room that you can walk into and engage with. But that said, like, we use that word a lot, community. Like, what does that mean to you, and how does that fit to your creative practice? We talk about your creative practice a lot too. Like, how does it all kind of come together? Because it seems like, maybe your quote unquote work itself is not as tangible. Like, it's such a amorphous thing that you're doing out in the world. So would love to kind of see or like hear what you're thinking around that. Like.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, well, my mom was a teacher for a long time and a professor, and my dad worked as a social worker. So I think that, like, social work and education have been parts of my upbringing for a long time, and I think ultimately the library is. Did I freeze again?
No, I can still hear you, but
okay, cool.
Yeah,
no worries. But yeah, I think that for a library, the entire project is so built on trust and so built on like, everybody is sharing the books that are in the space. Everybody is using the same like scanner to scan everything. And I think understanding that how you sort of treat a space or objects or whatever influence other people's way of treating those things or way of seeing the value of those things is an aspect of community that I didn't really even anticipate as much until really doing this project. And I think for me too, it's exciting that with the space like a library and the fact that we do gallery exhibits and we do events and stuff, there's a lot of different entry points for people to engage with the space. So if you want to come and have a purely free experience, you're welcome to sort of like come and read any of the books here for free, or you're welcome to see any of the art for free. And we do lots of free or donation-based events. But then if you want to buy a book, or if you want to pay for a ticket for an event, then that's also an option. Or if you want to spend like several $100s on an original piece of art and support an artist directly, like that's also an option. And I think a big part of community for me as well is just making it feel like everybody can be involved, and there isn't this barrier, while also appreciating that the people doing this have to be able to make a living and support themselves as well. So
Yeah.
people's generosity and people willing to donate books to us and support artists showing in the space, like all of that goes a really long way. And yeah, I think I don't know, my perception of community has definitely changed a lot through the process of doing this.
Yeah, I mean, especially, I don't know, I love kind of like tracing your thinking, but your camera went away. Are you still there? Oh,
Yes.
there you go.
Yeah, I just tried turning it on and off to see if that would help.
Oh, there you go. Does it help?
Yeah, it looks like,
Yeah.
I think it's going now.
One of our engineers in the call, so this is also like a good kind of bug testing moment.
Totally.
I guess like what I was trying to kind of say is that, you know, like just tracing back all the things that you've been saying, like the library feels like a space for, you know, collective thinking and remembering. And I think like, whoop, and you're back. Are you back?
I think so.
Okay.
Can you hear me at
Yeah.
least?
Yeah. What I was gonna say is like, library as like a place for like thinking and remembering together, even though like you might not necessarily know exactly what the final thought or idea is, and it's like part of like the journey, you know, and you're kind of like engaging the people around you to do it together. I don't know, just that seems like such a great thing. But we talk about books a lot. What are you currently reading, or like what are some of the books that have been like super formative to you? It seems like, you know, you spend a lot of time thinking about words and images and all of that good stuff. So, you know, are there any specific books or that have changed the way that you look at things and been kind of like pivotal to who you are now?
Yeah. I've been just like in my downtime at the library, I've been able to read a handful of books. I'm currently reading The Fall by Albert Camus, I think that's how you pronounce that. And
I mean, I can't pronounce most of the words that are not, you know, in English or Indonesian.
Totally.
So
all good. And I've been reading some of Thomas Pynchon's work, and I really just love the way that his mind works and his approach to writing. There's a book. I'm just gonna like grab it from the display case. Can you see me?
yes.
Okay, cool. There's a book by Margaret Kilgallen. This is like one of my favorite books that ever has been published. It's called In the Sweet By and By. And Margaret Kilgallen is an artist who was a part of a community at Alleged Gallery, which was a really big influence on me when I was younger, and this space in general. And I like gave a copy of this book to somebody years ago, and only recently somebody actually donated a copy to us, and it's like crazy because it's like a very hard to find book at this point, but she was an incredible artist.
Wow, it's like $500 an hour.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. It's like very expensive, and one of the few books that, if not the only book that was published of her collected work while she was alive. I don't actually know exactly the specific date that she passed away, but she passed away really tragically because she was sick and sort of had to decide between going through treatment or having her daughter, who she was pregnant with when she found out she was sick. And she was a really incredible sign painter, and and did a lot of street art and painted on trains and stuff. And there was like an Art 21 documentary about her that was made, I think while she was still alive and in the early 2000s. And that's always just been a really formative thing because she just talks a lot about art made with the human hand and just our attitudes about advertising and how we don't really think about the sort of mind garbage that we have to look at constantly and ingest. And so that she's like a really influential artist, and that book is like a really big thing for me. What else? We just got this really incredible collection. Someone donated this like literally days ago. It's a box set of work by Gary Panter.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that the book is just called Gary Panter, and it was published by Picture Box. And
I mean, I also love I was just like asking you, it's like, oh, what are the books that have been kind of like, shaped the way you feel about the world? And you're like, oh, let me just grab this pile right next to it.
I know, it's literally my favorite part of the library. It's just like I can pull something out whenever, and yeah, it's so nice to have access to a lot of this stuff. And I think that's even a big part of it too. Like I was saying, like thinking about work that allows you to like spend your time the way that you want to spend it. I like really lucked out by coming up with a project that means just getting to be surrounded by art all the time. And I kind of wanted to make a space that I would want to spend my time in, since I just like have to. But
I love it.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, and this book is really incredible. I think Gary Panter is like one of the most interesting artists of the past like century, and I think he's also an educator and has been involved in a lot of really cool projects and has supported so many great artists. And Picture Box, who published this, is a publisher that I really love, and they no longer exist, but they put out a ton of really special art books and comics, and I think that their approach to publishing, I think, is definitely influential on me as well. And this is a book I've wanted for a very long time and is pretty hard to find and expensive. But our friend Abby Banks, who's an incredible artist and person who lives in San Francisco, she's like helping her mom get rid of a bunch of stuff at the house that she grew up in, and she's like, oh, I thought this would be really nice for the library. And I don't know, I was so excited when this came in. And yeah, it's just been so special to get to like hear people talk about books too that they donate. And yeah.
Oh, that's amazing. What are you currently reading right now? Talking about
yeah. So
and picture books count. Like if I don't know, I feel like I revisit books that are not just all words over and over again.
Totally. Yeah. What have I been reading recently? This like Thomas Pynchon short story collection, Slow Learner, is one that I've been reading just like while working here. His other book, The Crying of Lot 49, I want to say that's what it's called. I'm like blanking on the title, but that's another one that I've been reading recently. And Glenn O'Brien had a really great book published of sort of a collection of his writing and some people writing about him. And he was a really fascinating person. He did a public access TV show called TV Party in the 80s, and a lot of like New York underground people like Debbie Harry from Blondie, and like Basquiat's first like television appearance was on that show, and Fab Five Freddy, who went on to like host Yo MTV Raps, Yo Raps MTV. I can't remember what it's called. But anyways, he And like he used to write for Interview magazine, like Andy Warhol's publication. And yeah, I don't know, that's been a really interesting thing to read. And I was reading a book about the Mud Club, which was a venue that he was certainly at a lot. And I don't know, sometimes I feel like if just whatever mood I'm in, and if I have some free time, I might just like pick up a book from the shelf. And I think lately I've been thinking a lot about community spaces and venues, and even like I didn't really know about Klaus Oldenburg. He's a really great artist who made a lot of like soft sculptures and stuff, but he did a lot of stuff called like happenings early on in his career. And I think just the idea of people getting together in a space and having some sort of exchange or some sort of experience that doesn't necessarily have to be financially motivated, or I don't know. There's someone who has been volunteering here who studied library science, and he opened my eyes to this concept called third place, which is essentially, I think that people use the term differently, but the way that I've sort of thought about it is there's like space that you live in, there's space that you work at, there's sort of commercial space, but space that you sort of feel comfortable being in without spending money, or space that you can sort of have this takeaway from that isn't about exchanging money, can be really valuable to people and help people get out of the sort of capitalist mindset of just having to pay to be somewhere. And yeah, and so I think that that's also like something that's been on my mind a lot with the library, and yeah, something I aspire to provide through the space.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's like really interesting to think about too, especially as like more and more spaces, both like physically and digitally, like all are ultimately like becoming more commercial, or like our private spaces instead of like these kind of non-commercial public spaces, I guess. So especially with like libraries disappearing, I don't know. Growing up in Singapore, I feel like I was very spoiled because I just assumed that there are places where you can go where you could just hang out. And coming to New York, that has, like in the last 10 years, it's gotten a little better, but for the most part, there aren't very many places for you to go to just like not do anything except for the parks, or like some museums, but like, I don't know. It feels weird to like not have, like some neighborhoods don't have them at all, or like it's not as accessible, so.
Totally. Yeah, and I think unfortunately too, like so many of those spaces that do exist they're not necessarily like new spaces. A lot of them are like really historic spaces, or places that there's some endowment or sort of legacy that is allowing that space to exist. And I think the fact that we don't really prioritize making new spaces like that means that the work that's also shared in those spaces, or the people that are encouraged to into those spaces, are not often young people, and are not often ideas that are like very relevant to our sort of current worldview.
Reality. Yeah, no, totally. Definitely living in that weird cognitive dissonance moment. So,
Totally.
Well, we're almost, we're 10 minutes in. By the way, if people have questions, just drop them in the chat box. We can ask them and talk about them. I think, would love to hear about, what inspires you. Well, okay. No, we talked about that. What gives you hope? That's like the context of the question. Like I think I can hear from your voice and the way that you talk about, the project that you're working on now, like that's part of the reason, that's one of the things that gives you hope, I'm guessing, but don't want to assume. But what else, like out in the world, like we're living in such a shit show right now. So.
Yes, very accurate. And yeah, and I think that like, I think something I was talking to Molly about too was, I think in the past, especially a lot of the like middle of the 20th century, there was so much of this. There's so much content and art made about the future and people's aspirations for the future, people's like ideas about the future, like the Jetsons or whatever. And I think that like it's really strange now that we like so often avoid the topic of the future or just don't want to think about the future in a way that I think people sort of immediately assume that the past was better than the present and that there isn't a chance to make a future that people are excited about. And I think that that mindset is really dangerous because the more that we sort of assume that there's no reason to have new ideas or no reason to be excited about a future, the harder it is for us to really even appreciate the present or see the present as an opportunity to create something in the future. And yeah, and I think that like it feels really exciting to work on a project where there isn't a specific demographic for what we're doing, like especially even just with the store portion of the library that like is right in the front window. I try to like curate books and stuff that might bring people from any age or like background into the space. And in the past, working for record labels and stuff, it was frustrating to have like maybe just like mostly teenagers buying music or mostly people who were like into this like emo music or something like as a customer base. And yeah. I think just realizing that like you can create a space or you can have an audience that can include like people in their 60s as well as like teenagers and other people, and that really gives me hope because it feels like yeah, just the conversation doesn't have to be limited to one demographic or whatever. And I think I don't know, all of the artists who are exhibiting work in the space this year have all like really inspired me. Just seeing them pull off these really large ideas or seeing them put all of this energy towards a body of work that anybody coming to the space during the month that it's up get to interact with has been really exciting. And I think coming out of a lot of the like social distancing and just people not being able to be around each other, I think it's exciting to see these projects that have been incubating for a long time and work that people have been making finally reaching other people. And I don't know, yeah, there's
who's showing right now? Who's like what's the exhibition on right now? Yeah.
Well, yeah, I can show you. The artist Jesse Moynihan, who used to work on the show Adventure Time and is a artist and animator. Yeah, he's incredible, and he actually just lives around the corner. He's been working on a tarot deck for about 7 years, and when I first interviewed him like years ago, he talked about it, and it's always just been in the back of my mind. But he basically he had a dilemma with like the first attempt to print it, and when I was starting the library, I sort of offered to help produce the project and suggested showing the original paintings for the collection. So I don't know if you can still see me or not, but I have like the deck of cards in my hand, and then like on the opposite wall from where I'm sitting, you can see like what we hung up is about all 22, or actually 23, because he included the back of the card design. But all the original paintings are on display and will be up for the following month.
That's amazing. All right.
Yeah.
Wrapping up our convo, I stole this from Vivian Fu, who I guess stole it from Molly Madelon, and the chain continues. But a rose and a thorn, as we kind of
love rose and thorn.
Up. Yeah, what's yours right now? Let's start with thorns. Let's always start with thorns, I guess.
What's giving me some thorns? There's a building across the street from my house that is being torn down currently, and
Oh
I'm
no.
like, yeah, I don't know the full sort of story behind it, but basically I've woken up to construction like every single day this past week, and talking to my friend who lives in the neighborhood, we're both like sort of nervous about what might replace that building and what might go there.
Yeah.
And so that's sort of a little bit of underlying anxiety that I have right now. And yeah, just like I think it's crazy to think that we're already halfway through this year, and I think like wanting to yeah, tend to everything with the space, and the project becoming something beyond what I really imagined has yeah, given me some existential dread maybe.
Oh no.
But
I was like, is this a rose or a thorn?
yeah,
It
this
sounds
is
like
definitely
you're
the
saying
thorn.
something that's good.
Almost. But then I think yeah, I guess the rose in that is I just feel so grateful to have the opportunity to do this space and meet so many people through it, and even just getting to look at this exhibit of paintings of tarot cards is like such a huge pleasure for me right now, and yeah, I think I'm planning on talking at illustration conference that's happening next week, and I've been planning for that, and that's definitely something I'm really excited about because I haven't gone to a conference or convention since before the pandemic, so
Oh,
I'm
that'll
really
be fun.
looking forward to that. Yeah.
Yeah. And will I see you at Brooklyn Comics probably? I think it's coming back this year.
Yeah, I don't know the details of it yet, but I'm definitely like going to be back in New York for some fairs as well, and yeah, I'm just excited to be out there again. It's been a
Cool.
while. Yeah.
Well, thank you again. I think, we're just at about at time. Gonna give a little bit of time for peeps to ask questions. If there are any, I'm not really seeing any
Sweet.
right now, but, happy to just wrap this up. Just a heads up, this room will continue to live on. So hopefully people drop by, and I'll clean up all these stuff that we've added just now for more conversation. I think I love
I
just
love
like
it.
adding things as to visualize what you're talking about. Maybe we'll keep this little poster. But thank you so much, Matthew. I really appreciate it, and hopefully I'll see you IRL soon. And
That sounds
looking
great.
forward
Yeah.
to see everything that you're doing with the library. So
I really appreciate that. And yeah, if anybody is in LA and wants to come by tomorrow, we have the opening for Jesse Moynihan's show, and yeah, we're doing different events and programming and workshops all throughout the week. So definitely stop by if you are in LA.
cool. Well, Mira's gonna drop by. So
Hell yeah.
I'm gonna turn off the station mode, so it's gonna kick off some people maybe. So, but feel free to rejoin, and then we'll go from there. Okay, I don't think it kicked anybody out. Well, happy to go offline. I know there's like no like hangout button, but I'll catch you on the flip side, Matthew.
Totally. That sounds great. This was such a wonderful conversation. I really enjoyed it, and thank you so much for asking me to do it.
No, of course. Appreciate hearing from you always. So
Hell yeah.
yeah, and I'll talk to you soon.
Talk
Alright.
soon. Bye.
Bye.
Take care.